Welcome.
I'm Gaia.
And I'm Angelica, and today we're speaking to Matthew from SQUID.
SQUID is the largest app founded in Ireland. It's an accessible loyalty platform that connects over 500,000 users to retailers across the globe.
We're going to begin with some this or that questions.
Speak or listen?
Listen.
Nature or nurture?
Nature, I think.
Why?
I don't know. I feel like people just have something in them sometimes. I think you could definitely teach a lot of stuff, but I do think some people just have a drive or sense of purpose in them a lot of times that I think you can see in certain people.
Mind or matter?
Mind.
Fast or slow?
Fast.
Instagram or TikTok?
Oh, Jesus. TikTok, maybe?
Okay.
Okay, I'm here for that. You use TikTok?
I don't like posting anything on either, but I probably spend more time on TikTok than I do on Instagram.
Fate or free will?
Ooh, free will.
Spontaneity or routine?
Ooh, again, these are good.
We put a lot of thought into it.
We did.
We put a lot of thought into it.
We did.
Spontaneity. Why not?
Logic or intuition?
Logic.
Teams or Slack?
Slack.
Ooh, okay, interesting. A lot of people, this is quite a controversial one, this one.
It is.
See, we use Google stuff and it's like a routine for us that every time somebody has a Teams meeting, we have to sign into another thing, sign in again, sign in. You're always about 5 minutes late to it. So my experience, because I use Google stuff, getting onto Teams is not good. So don't like Teams.
Fair enough.
But if we used it, probably be easier.
Control or surrender?
Control.
You're not the first to say that as a founder.
Yeah.
Typically, that's the answer.
Question or answer?
Question.
Why?
I think it's just more interesting. I think you find out a lot more stuff. The biggest learning curve for me has been there's so much that you don't know that you don't know. And so you become a lot less certain about everything, I suppose. So answering feels a bit more like a guess versus trying to ask the next question.
It's like a little tip of the iceberg.
Exactly. Yeah.
Polished or raw?
Ooh, raw.
Stop or start?
Start.
Give or take?
Give.
Think or do?
And I'm supposed to say do, but I do spend quite a lot of time thinking. So it's probably somewhere in between, to be honest. But my honest answer would probably be think.
Good to have balance.
Yeah.
Spectator or participant?
I prefer being a spectator, I'd have to say.
Macro or micro?
Macro.
That was quick. People usually get stuck on this one. They have no idea what we mean by it. So that was really good.
Oh, there's like a lot of contemplation. And they're like, which one do I go for? Okay, this is the last one. Ebb or flow?
Flow.
Okay.
I'm going to say.
Good.
Am I supposed to just say one word answers?
No, that's exactly it.
That's literally it.
That's exactly it. So, what's on your mind today?
Oh, quite a bit, I suppose. That's kind of half the problem. I mean, I suppose for us at the moment now, it's there's a couple of things going on between trying to fundraise, trying to grow what we're doing, what countries we should be growing in, new product releases, how that's all going to work, how we release them. So we're kind of in between a few things at the moment. And I think one of the big parts that we're all just kind of working around is more focus. So there's quite a lot that we could be doing. So a lot of what we work on is just narrowing it down to what are we going to do next and turning it back from kind of a macro more into a micro.
Okay. So how does the app work? How does the technology work? Is e-commerce included, or is it limited to physical purchases?
It's limited to physical purchases now. And the rationale for that is, again, on that theme of kind of having focus and trying to get started. What we really wanted to do was get uptake and engagement of our app. And because of that, we chose a vertical within retail, and then we chose it within a certain geography. So we went after replacing paper stamp cards, basically, for the independent coffee shops. And that became a kind of an entry point for us into the market. And as a result of that, we've just kind of gone very heavy on that's what we do. But it's basically a means of getting the consumer base of the app going. And then off the back of that, we can start to go across different verticals and bring in things like e-commerce, online purchases, other different verticals, etc.
So what exactly is Squid and what problem is it solving?
So Squid is an app that helps local businesses with their customer engagement and retention. The problem that we're solving is that retail businesses lose about half of their customers every month. Retail businesses and a lot of businesses in general are moving more towards what they'll refer to as performance marketing. And so where you're really able to attribute, if I'm spending to do marketing, is it actually generating any results? And, you know, if you go really old school, you'd be talking TV ads, newspapers, billboards, that kind of thing, where you genuinely have no idea whether you're just correlating, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
I run marketing, is it actually bringing anything in? Then that evolved to the likes of social media, where you can run Facebook, Google ads, that kind of type thing. So you can get a bit more targeted. You can say, I want to show this to a particular demographic. But with loyalty, what's very interesting is you can get that so granular, and you can get a real sense of full attribution on, did the people that I want to come back, did they make a purchase? And then things like Clubcard, as you were saying, they can actually use the information to start working out what was being purchased in those businesses. So, I mean, basically one of the shifts that's happened is loyalty has emerged as the most cost-effective form of marketing in retail. And so you're seeing all the big brands in particular are making a shift where they're dialing back on the amount that they're spending on kind of traditional advertising, and they're shifting more towards a focus of getting people on their loyalty program, be it an app or something like Clubcard or big airline, points, miles, all that kind of different stuff, if you know what I mean. It's a huge area, but I think the biggest problem that we saw in it, which is what we've kind of tried to focus on, is it's just way too fragmented. And so the ask to a consumer is, you know, sign up to thousands of different loyalty programs, which is a big ask. So what we're trying to do is work more on aggregating them together and then make it more accessible.
So what retail sectors are you focusing on now, and are you planning to expand?
So to begin with, it was that focus on kind of replacing a paper stamp card. So things in there were coffee shops, sort of sandwich kind of places, things like ice cream, you get barbers, beauticians, that kind of type stuff. But then what we wanted to do was move across into areas where, so basically I should say what they have in common is the product or service that they're selling. It's all at a very similar price point. So you can do a kind of buy 10, get one free. As soon as you move into something though where the price points are mad different, they run a points-based loyalty program. But so that might be, you know, you couldn't go into a supermarket and have buy 10 bits of chewing gum, get a bottle of champagne for free, if you know what I mean. So you'd want to do it on how much you spent. But in order to do that, you need to know how much was spent. And you can get that from two sides. You can either get that on the consumer side, which are things like from their bank or from their card, or you can get it from the business side, which is their point of sale, it's normally called, like their till system, the thing you pay at the counter. And so what we've done recently is we've partnered with a company called Square. So they're the largest point of sale provider in the world. But effectively through that partnership, they've given us receipt data. And on that receipt data, we're basically able to run that. So we can see what was bought, how much was spent. And then we can run closer to like you mentioned Tesco earlier, but a Clubcard type program, if that makes sense. So that's kind of like how we would expand across different verticals is now we can basically sell to anyone who's got a Square terminal, which is about, I think, 5 million businesses or so. So the game plan for us is we keep partnering with different point of sale providers, and that helps us to basically expand across the smaller businesses. But as well, we're going to do partnerships on the consumer side. So we've just started that now, basically.
What partners do you have for now on that side?
So you're basically trying to partner with the likes of Visa and MasterCard, and there are companies that'll do that for you. So we're working with a company called Fidel at the moment. And they basically yeah, they help you kind of be able to allow a consumer to link their card to the app. And then if that card is used in a partnered store, we can see the information basically.
I think it'd be quite fun to talk about your founder's story,
Right.
because we spoke about that briefly in our intro call. What happened? How did Squid come about?
Yeah. So, well, I'm trying to think where to begin almost on it. But I mean, I suppose for initial context, my family's background is in law. So there was no one in my family who had a kind of a entrepreneurial background, let's call it, maybe.
Entrepreneurial spirit.
Yeah. And Ireland definitely as well. I think it's quite an old school type kind of place where I think a lot of people, when you go through school and college and that kind of stuff, they go, what's your job? And if you said you were trying to do something like start up a company, be not very...
Alarm bells go off.
Exactly,
Risk.
yeah. So I did engineering after I finished school, mechanical engineering. So I was kind of dull as it gets. But then when I was doing that, I met Katie. So we were both in a scholarship program thing. But we thought that was good initially until they told us basically if you don't maintain your grades, you'll get booted out of it every semester. So not a good time. But because of that, we started working quite closely together because we had the same pressure on us in the same course.
Trauma bond.
Exactly. And so we kind of almost just worked out a bit of a recipe together where Katie is easily the smartest person I've ever met. But she is incredibly detail orientated. So I was way more kind of slapdash when I'd see things and kind of go, oh, that's the broad idea. And then Katie would kind of go, what are you talking about?
So she's micro or macro.
Yeah, but she'd put the detail on it, and then, you know, but basically together we kind of work faster through different things. So it'd be like new concept, figure it out together. And then I suppose that was what college was. Off the back of that, though, we kind of worked out we're quite good at this recipe of new things come up and then we'll figure them out together.
Yeah.
And we did the same study abroad together, and we did the same masters together as well. And when we finished, we were almost kind of joking about we should just keep doing this. And while we were on our study abroad, we were in Berkeley in California. And that was the first place that I kind of got proper exposure to tech, let's say, and all that kind of side of the world. And it just fascinated me, I have to say. It was so dynamic, it was so innovative, and, you know, there's so much there's just such a sense of possibility in that place that's kind of hard to describe.
And did that contrast to Ireland?
Massively. Yeah. Like, college in Ireland for me felt very much like a means to an end. It was kind of, you know, you turn up and
Tick the box.
you're going through the motion just to get out, and then you apply for a job. That's the next motion kind of thing.
It is like that in many places, though.
I think so, but when we were there was just such a sense of the next big thing will happen around here, which I'd not felt before. And it's basically infectious is probably the best way of describing it.
So interesting how an area like that can just inspire.
And it goes back to, again, that point of kind of like the stuff that I didn't know, if you know what I mean.
Of course.
And then when we came back, we kept on thinking kind of what's a kind of a big idea that hasn't been done yet. And one of the ones that kept on sticking out to us was, how come there isn't an app that keeps all your loyalty cards in one place? And we basically kept on looking at it and properly thinking about it. And the more we looked into it, the more we kind of found, because again, we had that hesitancy initially where we're going, okay, that seems to make sense, but we're obviously not going to go and do it, if you know what I mean. But then, we just kept on finding out more and more problems as to people who've tried it before, what went wrong, the opportunity as well. We didn't realize a lot about kind of like how you do different things. And I think one of the best things for us as well is because we knew so little about what we were trying to do when we started. There was a huge amount of just kind of running into it. I personally, I think that's probably one of the parts that we quite enjoy, is just like the space is so broad. You're going across from like all things consumer, which, you know, in there's data, there's modern culture, there's like different, you know, payments, there's emerging technologies. And then on the business side, you have to learn all these kind of different things about what it's like to run a business. So it's a very interesting world for Katie and I to be in, to just constantly keep learning. And I think we like that quite a lot.
How many ideas did you scrap, I mean, if any, before you decided to go with Squid?
We had a few kind of different versions of what Squid might be. Katie had an idea as well. Trying to remember exactly what it was, but it was essentially kind of e-commerce for clothing.
Okay.
I think the thought process there was, once we found out more about competition, we started to realize, right, that'll be properly competitive to try and do something.
Yeah.
And again, we just genuinely didn't kind of know about things like funding, etc. I mean, we obviously knew what it was, but we had no idea how you kind of access it. So our thought process was, this has to be something that we get up and get started ourselves. So a big problem with like the clothing was, how do you buy loads of clothes to sell, if you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it was actually quite focused, now that you say it, onto, we did want to get after that problem. And the more we found out about it, the more that it's something that's quite easy to get a little obsessed with, for want of a better word. Just as I was saying, because it's so broad. But yeah, now that you say it, it wasn't actually that much of a deviation off just kind of, we knew that we wanted to make an app, a kind of a universal app for loyalty, but then it was how we were going to do that we were kind of talking back and forth on.
Yeah.
What's it been like with your dynamic with Katie, with your co-founder? How has that evolved?
I think what was good, again, is because we had all that time in college, we knew how the other one ticked. And so Katie, again, I just know at this stage that when she's quite like certain about something, as I was saying, she's just a lot smarter than I am. So I just know when she's certain, you go, okay, that's definitely right.
You trust her intuition.
You say yes.
Yeah. And so particularly on the product, in the beginning, Katie had quite a few things that she was very certain about. So one that I remember kind of going, this makes absolutely no sense to me, was the NFC tap. So, you know, the kind of old tap technology. And at the time when we were doing that, it was sort of in its early stages for phones, for like card payments and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
QR codes, if you know them, were kind of the mainstream thing at the time.
Never heard of them.
COVID. We had.
I'm joking.
But so
I really thought QR codes were going to go away. I won't lie. I thought they would disappear after 2022.
Practical though, aren't they?
See, this is why you should have been part of the, because I was like, why wouldn't we use a QR code?
Yeah.
Yeah, but then
This makes sense.
But then Katie was like, no, it's gotta be the tap. The tap's way smoother, it's way slicker.
Yeah.
But like, to give you an example, when we first launched Squid, because we went with the tap, my phone was too old to use it.
Oh no!
So I couldn't use it when it
didn't
first
have the
came
right
out.
software. Oh.
So but it's those kind of things that she'll be very like set on and determined as to, no, it's definitely going to be tap. Sure enough, all the new iPhones all have it built into it. All the new kind of Android phones have it, etc. now. And it's so mainstream now. People just tap to pay, they tap to get on to transport, and now they're tapping to do their loyalty, if you know what I mean. So yeah, there are things like that where she's very kind of set, particularly on product, that again, I just kind of know when she has that certainty, you go with her. But then maybe I'm more of the driver, possibly, between the two of us. So she, you know, you kind of need to push her along sometimes to make those really good ideas come out of her, if that makes any sense.
She's very creative.
Very creative, but also kind of confusingly very detail oriented again.
Okay.
So she has that broad kind of way of looking at things, and then she can write down into like real detailed flows of like, next step is this, followed by this, followed by this, followed by this.
So you help her make it happen.
I just kind of, it's quite an easy, you kind of just nudge her along and then good stuff happens.
With the branding, with Squid.
Oh, Katie again.
Where did that come from?
I, being an absolute weirdo, had this thought process of I wanted it to be something to do with the sea. I just really like the sea. So I was kind of...
Fair enough.
Super fair.
It's got to speak to you.
It's got to speak to you. But then Katie was kind of, let's try and make it a bit more logical, will we? And kind of mainstream things that she was thinking of is, okay, we'll keep with your odd thing there. But we can go after something. So to your point on the kind of the tentacles, it was kind of keeping all the cards in one place. So being able to hold like multiple things.
I saw the vision. I saw it, and it makes so much sense. Let me tell you. I can. You know what? You should create an icon with like cards in the. Well, okay.
That is so smart.
And then there was the other thing as well about something that is kind of smart. So we wanted something that was a bit, you know, like octopus and that sort of stuff are famously kind of. We actually did want to start with that, to be honest, octopus. And then to your point, then it came a thing of like octopus is quite long to put on an app icon. And then so we were like, how could we shorten that? And then we kind of made it into squid. We wanted a name that's a little bit different enough that people kind of go, oh, okay. And then it sticks in their head slightly more. Then I feel a lot of the tech names around that time, they'd be kind of hybrid-y names, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So they're like a couple of words almost mixed together,
Pretentious.
if that makes sense. And then people can kind of forget sometimes what it was because it's like
they're sort of made up names. Like
To be fair, you know, a bit more creative maybe than just going to random sea
squid
creature.
is creative. I mean, a squid.
Yeah, it spoke to me.
It did speak to me as well. It spoke to us, clearly.
Spoke to us, yeah.
I don't know, but it's...
And I remember also in our intro call, you were speaking about US versus UK approach to loyalty schemes. Can you talk about that a bit more?
Yeah, so again, the kind of the underlying concept is exactly the same. Both places have big retail markets. Both need more footfall coming into them. Huge amount of competition. And so loyalty makes sense in both markets. What's different though is the payment landscape. And so in the US, every time a card payment is processed, the payment companies will take a fee out of the transaction, and they call that the interchange fee. That fee in the US is uncapped. Depends on the transaction, but let's say it's about an average of maybe 3% of the transaction or so. And effectively what they've done in America is they've used that 3%. So picture, say, $100 transaction, $3 goes off to the payment companies. What they can afford to do is they can afford to grab, let's say, $1 out of that and give it back to the consumer. And they give it back to them in the form of points, which is basically an incentive to keep on using their product. In the EU, that got capped at 0.2% on debit cards and 0.3% on credit cards. So there's a massive difference in how much the payment companies are in there. So they can't just grab the same thing like an Amex do and go, you earn points on every transaction. Over here, it's just not done because they literally lose money. So while American credit card companies have all these loyalty programs associated with them, which do drive massive footfall for the brands beneath them, over here, the banks just haven't done it basically because they can't do it in a real simple way. So they need basically an aggregator. They need like a Squid, to be honest, to come along and make like a coalition of all these brands together. And then the brands, again, because it is a form of marketing, they can pick up the what you give back to the consumer. And I think the key difference, again, on almost like what's been an education for me, so it's again something that we need to try and put more out into the market here, is that I think over here loyalty programs are perceived to almost be a little bit more like a thing you do to be nice to your customers, especially by some of the smaller brands. Whereas in America, they view it as that more performance marketing. So, you know, if somebody comes in and they make 10 purchases from me, I'll pay for that. And they'll pay for it in the form of, they invest though directly into the consumer. They don't kind of do it over the head where you put it up on a billboard or you put it through a social media ad or something like that. So it's a way more direct investment into the people who are buying from you to just keep coming back. But they view it as a cost of business, if that makes sense.
I also feel like in the US, there's a real mob mentality surrounding like coupons and loyalty schemes. It's very ingrained in the culture. Whereas in the UK it isn't as much. Do you think that's because of the structural reasons behind it?
I do think a huge amount of it is to do with accessibility. Because, you know, it's not like you can see it in the stats as well, but it's not that discounts and things like that aren't used over here. It's just that they're way harder to administer. So in the US, they've got a lot more. The reality is they just have a lot more innovation that comes ahead of here. So we'll tend to be kind of, you know, 5 years maybe behind what they've released before they choose to try and propagate it over here. So, you know, you'll get a lot of things that get off the ground, they'll get moving over there, and they'll make it very seamless to interact with something like a loyalty program or to get discounts en masse. Over here, again, it just tends to be that the technology, by the time it gets moved to here, might be a little bit older. So people become aware of, oh, that thing's hit over here, but there's something new coming. And the other part, I suppose, again, is just the accessibility. So it's still just more fragmented almost by design over here. So again, what we're trying to work out is, can we make it more homogenized like it is in the US so that it's easier for people to interact with things? If that makes any sense. I feel like
it does. It does. I also want to ask, on a more personal front, with running a business, how does it work with you being a leader? Have you developed that as a skill?
I would say almost probably definitely not. But,
why do you think that?
I don't know. I didn't really, again, on the kind of things that you just do without really thinking about it. I didn't think of starting this as kind of, oh, you've got to become a leader, if that makes sense. We more just kind of went at it as to, wouldn't it be cool if we made a thing that fixed that problem, if you know what I mean? And then one of the areas that I have gotten fascinated with now is company culture. Because again, that was kind of like a buzzword that I would have heard at the beginning, that people would talk about, oh, the culture is amazing. And you'd be kind of, in my head, I was like, that's a load of, you know.
What's the culture like at Squid?
Yeah, see, this is the thing. But I mean, you start to realize that it's really, it's kind of organic is the reality of kind of, you know, so it kind of emerges before you start to become conscious of like, oh, that's our culture. So I mean, like, then once you kind of like recognize that it's there, you start to think about things like, how can you influence it? How can you remove more negative sides of it? How can you make it more positive, etc.? But then also trying to kind of, there was a book by a guy called Ben Horowitz, I forget the name of it now, but it was so good on all this kind of cultural stuff. But a big part that he was basically saying is that you don't want to make it inorganic, which made so much sense once you kind of feel it. But I think I would describe our culture as quite like, I would say very open. I think we're probably, compared to the other startups that I've seen, we talk a lot to each other. I think that like just a huge amount of honesty as to this isn't working or that's not happening, etc. I think we are very determined too, which I think is good. So we know that we're going after quite a big thing. We know we're not starting in the US, if that makes sense. Where so yeah, I would say kind of like dogged and maybe quite open with each other.
What do you mean by organic?
So almost in the sense of, if you bring a bunch of people into a room that you've not really met before, and if you say collectively we are going to be, our interactions with each other are going to be, I don't know, say open and honest or something like that. What you'll find is maybe people are just more closed off and they prefer humor maybe, or something like that, or maybe they prefer being really clinical, or so
you're not trying to force a value onto them.
Exactly. I think it feels more like when you meet a new group of people, in my head is maybe the best analogy, and there's just a dynamic in that group, and it might not be the same dynamic as the next group, but no one's actively walked in there and said, this group will interact with the following rules, if you know what I mean. And I think that when you do that, it doesn't work, because people kind of but you do start to notice what we've tried to do anyway, is you do start to notice that when it kind of emerges, you can feel it a bit more.
Yeah.
And then you can start to map it a bit more and actually turn it into different values. So like there's certain things that we've tried to, like, so as an example, one of the other ones is I do think people help each other quite a lot in Squid, which I think is good. And one of the main things that we've tried to do to make that happen more is give everyone shares in the company, basically. And so one of the values that we have that I won't lie, we did learn it off one of our investors though, was together we're better. And it's kind of basically that because everyone is an owner of the company, it becomes quite easy to basically understand what's good for me is good for you is good for the next person.
Yeah.
So particularly with things like, say, I've seen in some different places where, like, let's say a product team might have a massive friction with a sales team because, the sales team want to sell more and they're kind of getting frustrated at the product team for you haven't built the stuff fast enough or you haven't, I want to tell the customer that it'll do X, Y, and Z that it won't do. And, you could, just as an example of something that could like create tension between, when they understand that if I make the sale, yes, I'll earn commission. But if I make the customer really annoyed, that the product doesn't do what I said, they might leave. If they leave, that's bad for the company.
Yeah.
Therefore, it's bad for my shares. Therefore, I won't do it.
How big is the team? Because this sounds easier with a small team. So how can you make sure that this continues to be the case as the team grows?
Yeah. Again, sorry, 28 people now. But again, like this is why I'm kind of interested in it, is it's really challenging. And the fact that I kind of know that it needs to be organic, I don't understand enough about how and when you interject and you try and like change little things. Because obviously, again, you're going to get times when someone does, of course, get massively frustrated at somebody else, and then is that more like a management thing or is that a cultural thing? And trying to think about those kind of things. And then, but by and large, what we've tried to do is we've tried to spend a lot of time recruiting people at kind of more managerial positions that we feel will kind of embody the same values and systems, let's say, and then that they kind of can propagate that by example. Yeah, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
So when you're hiring someone, you're really looking for similar values.
Similar, I mean, definitely. Sorry, just that don't that we're looking at, can the person do what we need?
Yeah.
But you do start to. One of the things that I didn't really get in the beginning that I'm more starting to see now is you start to really think about, can I imagine that person in our company? And would they fit with what we're trying to do? Would they be able to tell people, honestly, this is the situation? Will they have the kind of the grit is definitely one of the, because again,
grit and intensity.
Yeah, the nature of what we're doing is there's a huge amount of kind of swirling mist in front of you, if you know what I mean, that you're trying to piece together into some sort of clearer path. And it's very frustrating for people because they want that kind of, what's my job? I want to know exactly what it is.
You want a roadmap.
Yeah. And, a lot of it is basically, can you go figure out how to find a way through that mist, if you know what I mean?
When you were first building a team, who were the first people you brought on and what was that dynamic like?
Again, we're just very lucky, I think, that we had one person in particular, Ella. So she just finished up studying nursing at the time, but kind of almost as like a part-time thing. She was like, oh, I'd love to help you get businesses on board, get into a few places and all that sort of stuff. And she just did that. And then I think she kind of almost started to enjoy the feeling of getting something started and getting something going. So Ella came in, and then I think when the three of us started doing more work together, it kind of almost drew more people in because we'd be talking about it. And then so the building of the team in the early days was quite organic, for want of a better word. It was less kind of let's go out and hire people. It was more just people hearing almost about what we're doing, and then they come in, because you do have to be quite, mad, let's say, to come and do something at a very early stage if you don't have good backing behind you. So unless you have like a big pot of investment that says I can guarantee you'll be employed for the next 2 years or something like that. Ours was very much day by day.
I think with the investment side, what's interesting is that often founders tend to have mentors. Have you experienced that? Did you look to one particular investor or friend for advice?
Again, on the lucky side, and I do think that is my uncle's best friend had set up a tech company in Ireland, and he sold it. He had a really kind of big exit from it. But he was the most modest, still is the most modest person I've ever met. So you'd never kind of know it from him. So I would have known him a couple of times just as my uncle's friend and that sort of stuff. But when we got into it, it became you should go and talk to Andrew is his name. And so we sat down with Andrew and we told him this is what we're thinking about. And he, because he knew my uncle, he'd know my mum and that kind of stuff. But I do remember him saying, I don't tell your mum I said this, but I'd do it.
Go with it.
Run with it.
Just do it.
And so Andrew's been a brilliant kind of mentor and investor. And he's helped us both so much in terms of everything from getting started to things like fundraising to meeting lots of people. And he was actually the first person. I remember the culture thing really struck me, because I'd been in a few offices and that sort of thing, but when I went into Andrew's office, it was a very strange feeling that you could palpably feel the level of pride people had in there, that they were working for this thing. And it's really kind of like,
That's also rare.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Rare to have
it's
that.
really amazing. And so I was kind of
environment.
So
inspiring like that.
And that thing of, so it's off Andrew, as I was saying, that we actually took that thing of the Together We're Better. But you can really feel that they want to pull together, they want to help each other and stuff like that. So it's an amazing learning.
Well, I think that's all we have time for. Thank you so much,
Thank
Matthew.
you.
This has been so interesting.
Good.
Catch us
Thank you
next
so
week.
much.
Yeah. Stay tuned.
Stay tuned. Let's not say stay tuned.
No, we won't. I knew you wouldn't like it. What I was
We can
saying
include
it.
that. Matthew, thank you so much.